Okay, look. This is obviously, probably, gonna be a rough one. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, has a notorious status amongst the trans community as a real low point in transness in media. And I don't think that this video is going to be about figuring out whether it's actually surprisingly good, because thanks to cultural osmosis, I'm already kind of aware of what the problem in this movie is, and so probably are you watching this. Even if, like me, you've never truly seen the film. But it's the fact of never having watched the film that made me want to do this video in the first place, because I think it is important for us to study these low points and figure out why they are the way that they are, what was so bad about them, and hopefully understand better what to look forward to in the future. People also click more on negative stuff like this, so yeah, this isn't a completely altruistic content creator decision on my part. I also do like having good performing videos, okay? So, let's call it a 50-50 split of beneficial to me and everyone else. So yeah, I guess I want to understand what made Ace Ventura one of the most infamous cases of trans representation or trans-adjacent representation, when there are technically movies or TV shows that feature far more violent or hostile or aggressive attitudes and repercussions upon the trans people involved in them. What was it about Ace Ventura that made it stand out to the degree that it's one of those cases that almost every queer person is aware of? Before we leap into trying to answer those questions, I just want to quickly cover two bases. The first is the trigger warning, which is to say that if you didn't get it already, there is going to be a discussion of some very uncomfortable transphobic scenes and attitudes. If that isn't something you want to see, then I'd advise not watching this one. The second is for the people who might be coming initially with a host of defensive reactions to this video. Reactions that might be further heightened because of who is criticising it, i.e. me. Now, I get it. You might have grown up watching Ace Ventura, or you might be a huge fan of Jim Carrey. Personally, I prefer when he mixes his comedic stylings with serious narratives, like The Truman Show or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think those films are when he truly shined as a comedian and an actor, rather than having one of those overpower the other to the point that it kind of just became boring to watch. But if you are in those camps, I truly do understand that someone critiquing or calling something that you made a fundamental part of your identity transphobic or bigoted does feel like an assault on you as a person. But just hear me out. I promise I'm not going to say that anyone who is a fan of this movie is an irredeemable monster, or that if you enjoyed it that means you are now a transphobic bigot on the level of Milo Yiannopoulos. Yeah, remember that fucking prick? Can't believe I'm mentioning Milo Yiannopoulos in the year 2023. Wild. Just give me a chance, you know? Anyway, we've quibbled enough. And now it's time to actually get into the movie, and those trans-ish scenes themselves. Now, I am not going to be talking about the whole entire film, for obvious reasons. But to give you the brief summary up to our point that we need you and me to get to, Ace Ventura is a much mocked private detective, specialising in animal-related crimes, who is investigating the kidnapping of a dolphin from the Miami Dolphins prior to the Superb Owl, which then leads on to a conspiracy-filled run of comedy into the team and into a variety of various affiliates, and also the human death of Roger Podacta, the head of operations for the Miami Dolphins, who fell off of a balcony. While at the same time, Ace Ventura deals with the pain in the ass that is Lieutenant Einhorn of the Miami Police, a dastardly lady who attempts to get him to drop the case while also kissing and making moves on him. This all comes to a head when Ace Ventura is hunting down Ray Finkel, a disgraced member of the Miami Dolphins at a mental asylum, and Ace Ventura discovers some elements in Finkel's possessions that make it somewhat clear that Finkel took on the persona of the missing hiker Lois Einhorn and became a woman to go undercover and ruin the Miami Dolphins and those who disgraced them and replaced them back in the day. And it's upon that discovery from Ace Ventura about Einhorn that we really hit the crux of our discussion in this movie about trans representation and the reactions of cis people to the idea of transness or trans adjacentness. Now, to drag us back a few scenes from this revelation, because guess what? I had to watch the whole fucking movie. There is something that happens earlier on that passes by as a mere comment, but upon review suddenly stands out a whole lot more. And it's during the scene where Einhorn is pashing with Ace Ventura, and he makes this comment about her gun.
Your gun is digging into my hip.
What's wrong, Ace? Want me to read you your rights?
Maybe later.
Now, with time, it becomes very clear that this comedic reference to her gun is actually about a penis. Which does make me think, for some reason, of all those conservative memes where they talk about how the only bulge they want in their woman's pants is a gun. And, you know, let's just attempt to ignore the complete lack of firearm safety that such a thing represents. A penis is less deadly. I would prefer to discover someone has one of those than a lethal weapon shoved down the pants when it should be in a holster, but that's just me. Also, I'm saying that the gun should be in a holster, not the penis. I can't imagine what a penis holster looks like. Although I imagine editing me can probably find a picture of one. What we see here is the seeds being sown for us to get that this was going to be a reveal. For us to look back on it and say, oh, aho, they planned for this all along. If you paid attention, it was obvious that such a trans reveal was going to happen. But the more fascinating part in this scene, to me, is how the music and how Ace Ventura plays into this. Which is that, it's designed to look like a hot woman cop, femme fatale, making out with Ace Ventura. So that's kind of desirable, and the jazz would suggest, and his clear and apparent interest in her would suggest, that this is all cool and good. You know, this is a sexy scene.
Bony little bitch, Melissa Robinson.
No, you just don't do anything for me. Down, boy!
And then we get our contrast to that in this revelation scene a mere 10 or so minutes later, when Ace Ventura suddenly realizes that Einhorn, this hot, attractive woman, was actually a man dressed up as a woman, living as a woman, with surgeries to look like a woman, who identifies as a woman and sleeps with or hits on guys like a woman. Also, I want to take a brief moment to just talk about how insane it is that Ace Ventura reaches this conclusion at all. Like, he just sort of clicks on it and has his big revelation dancing around celebrating scene where he's like, oh, I've worked it out. But there isn't like records of a surgery or anything like that. He just looks at the Finkel photo before standing up and shouting, Finkel is Einhorn, Einhorn is Finkel, Einhorn is a man.
That's it. Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is a man!
And it's that moment there, upon the mention of that fact out loud, that the whole movie sees the open portal to the land of transphobia, where the Steven Crowders and Ron DeSantis' roam free, and dives right into it by having Ace Ventura rush to the toilet and begin violently retching to a musical accompaniment. He brushes his teeth and eats the toothpaste, as well as toilet plungering his face, burning all his clothes and sitting naked in the shower crying. You might be thinking to yourself right now, wait, hang on, I've seen this before. I've clicked this almost exact turn of events happening. And yes, another straight guy has been in a not exactly the same situation, but close enough, in Family Guy, with Brian having sex with a trans woman without knowing about it, and then having almost the exact same response. It's also kind of a little similar to the crying game, but nobody knows what that is, so we won't bother talking about that right now. It's like a classic transphobic reference. The idea that having made out with or had sexual feelings for or been interested in a trans woman is so disgusting, so gross and vile, that you have to purge your body and life of anything that they have touched and wash yourself at the idea of that touch or thought. We will get into it further when we're done talking about the movie, because trust me, this just gets worse. This is merely the tip of the transphobic iceberg. That's right, the shittiest moment in the Family Guy episode, the one that I decried as one of the worst episodes of trans TV in media history, which might or might not have been true, but it was certainly a good title, that's merely the entree in the rotten meal of Ace Ventura's Act 3. So, it's not good. And so, downing gum like it will stop him from feeling gay, Ace watches Einhorn's house, and then tails her, making a comment about that gun digging into the hip thing from earlier, while dry retching a little bit. And Ace watches as Einhorn talks to the captured quarterback, Dan, and then makes out with him to that saxophone coming back in from earlier.
Would you like some refreshments, Dan? I'll be right back, Dan.
Serious question here, why is she making out with so many darn people? Except for, I guess, in a classical movie sense, establishing herself as a femme fatale, and more specifically in this sense, Ace Ventura's sense that is, for us the audience to have a little giggle at these guys getting forcibly kissed by a guy pretending to be a girl. Oh, they sure knew how to do comedy back in the day before cancel culture came along, that's for sure. Unfortunately, as Ace is freeing Dan after dealing with the goons, Einhorn appears holding a gun, and then makes a comment about there being too many men on the field, because have you got it yet? Have you clocked the joke and the bit that they're gonna beat you to death with? Have you clocked Einhorn yet? Have you got it? Einhorn then calls in the cops, as she sees the opportunity to frame Ace for the whole kidnapping and murder stuff, seeing as she is a lieutenant who can do whatever she wants apparently.
Aguado is Lieutenant Einhorn. Send some men over to the Hollandale Yacht Basin on Victoria Road. I've got the kidnapper trapped in the warehouse. It's Ace Ventura, pet detective.
Oh, and the joke makes an appearance again as Ace mentions how he knows what it's like to be under pressure, as he's kissed a man. Honestly, just get to the reveal already. I can't take much more of these sly jabs about her being secretly really a man. It's killing me. Oh, wait, no, it's just another joke about how Ace is getting his ass kicked by Einhorn because she is really a guy. God, they just milked the shit out of this one.
Having a little trouble with the lady, Ace?
You don't understand. She's
Finally though, as all the police are around and preparing to shoot Ace Ventura, Ace's real love interest is holding a different cop who is on their side, I think, hostage. We get to the big scene, where Ace drops his entire conclusion on the case, points the finger at Lois Einhorn, and reveals that she is Ray Finkel, and is actually a man. And then he moves to his grand plan, because at this point it is a rather unbelievable situation, and he clearly, quite possibly, made a few leaps in logic that nobody else is following. Seriously, it's entirely plausible that, Ray Finkel befriended a woman who helped him and pretended to be Lois Einhorn while he worked on it from the shadows. Or maybe Lois Einhorn is just a trans woman who happens to be working with Ray Finkel. He really jumped the gun, is what I'm saying here, and it's lucky that it works out to be true. Nothing we've seen at all confirms that Ace Ventura is right here. But he decides that the obvious choice is to grab her hair and pull off her wig, because why would a real woman wear a wig? Don't answer that question. And that doesn't even work, because it turns out that Lois Einhorn has real hair. It's just her hair. Like she grew it. Then he rips off her shirt to reveal her fake breasts that she is wearing, because why would any real woman wear fake breasts? Don't answer that question. Stop answering the question. You know that Ace Ventura doesn't want you to answer that question, okay? But he finds out that they're also just real breasts that she really grew or had breast surgery for. They don't clarify what the situation was there. I believe that she's probably just on HRT. That can happen. And at this point, the question becomes, was this the master plan? Like, even if it turned out she didn't have those, does any of that prove Ace Ventura right? Or does it just look like sexual harassment and assault of an officer from a deranged man?
To get rid of big ol' Mr. Kanish!
This shit isn't foolproof, it's full. And in a moment of desperation at the shit going poorly, Ace takes it all the way and rips off her skirt, revealing her pants. Because, I mean, come on, you know at this point where this is going. But yet, no dick bulge. None of that. This is a shock. But oh wait, Dan alerts us to the fact that she is just tucking as Ace spins her around, and we see all of the stuff at the back while Ventura gloriously proclaims that she is not a woman, that she killed Mr. Podacta because he tried to sleep with her and found out she was really a guy, that all of this adds up, which I don't know if it does. And also, just a brief mention on the tucking part, this is giving you the wrong impression of, I think, how tucking works. I've seen big dick drag queens that can tuck better than this, and I would think that Lois Einhorn, a person pretending to be a woman for, a long period of time, would also be able to do better too. So, I guess Ace Ventura's inability to accurately reflect queerness is not a shocker to anybody. But to this revelation, everyone in the shed begins spitting and trying to rub out their mouth.
He found Captain Winky!
Well, all the guys do anyway. Ace's love interest, whose name I didn't bother learning at any point, but it's Courtney Cox, it's Monica from Friends. She doesn't really seem fazed by the whole situation at all, because as we will get into later, the whole point of this scene is to make it clear the disgust that goes along with attraction towards trans bodies. The fear in the minds of those who might be into a trans woman or a trans person, only to find out that they were previously a guy or pretending to be a guy, or might have parts that make somebody question their sexuality in a way that is terrifying for men to comprehend. A mindset that is toxic and dangerous for the trans women involved, and often leads to retribution from those guys, which the film kind of gives us by having Einhorn publicly embarrassed, assaulted, harassed, and sexually demeaned as a person.
Would a real woman be missing these?
If you want more stuff about that, look up the trans panic defense. It won't make you a happier person, but it's important to know about. Her status as a murderer and a kidnapper is almost secondary in regards to why people are reacting with disgust. The guy pretending to be a girl is the far more reviled concept in this scene. And then Ace makes out with Courtney Cox's character. Presumably Einhorn goes to jail, though I honestly have no idea what the case would look like in the courtroom, because the evidence seems a little bit flimsy here that she is definitely Ray Finkel. I don't know, is someone going to have to track down like her surgeons or some shit? But also, in this end scene where Ace is making out with Courtney Cox, what if Courtney Cox's character is trans? Ace? What if she has a penis? Did you rip off her pants to check? How can you be sure unless you violate somebody else's space and body to make sure? And that's the movie. Now, we've got a lot to talk about. A lot. And I want to start us off with the defences that people will use for the movie and its transphobia, because right now, things certainly don't look very good. You can sort of see why it's become such an infamously well-known film amongst queer circles, and it's not because Ace Ventura is secretly a cool ally. There is really only one defense that I have seen being commonly used, and it's kind of a combination of arguments, which is basically centered around the notion that Einhorn isn't really trans. She's just a murderous man who happens to be a woman to such a degree that it's basically unnoticeable, and who makes out with a bunch of guys when they have no reason because I guess they want to. Ray was gay or some shit. That part never gets touched upon by the people making this argument, honestly. Now, the problem that I have with this argument is that it doesn't really matter to seeing this as a blatantly transphobic piece of media that uses harmful stereotypes and notions to construct its villain in a way that impacts the trans community and influences people into seeing all trans people as deceivers and disgusting. Whether they are or are not trans is basically irrelevant in the conversation here, because ultimately the audience is getting that message from it about the way that guys should feel around the idea of a woman who used to be a man. And it also encourages the consideration of that group as potentially having people in it that are serial killers or murderers or criminals who are using transness as a shield from justice. That's the exact kind of rhetoric that has fueled a long-standing campaign by conservative lawmakers and pundits to retract rights from the trans community and fuel hate-filled takes that lead to violent assaults and terrorist attacks on us and cis women who just don't match the opinion that those people have of what cis women should look like. It's this kind of comedy, these kinds of jokes, that reflects and reiterates the stances that get trans people killed or harassed. And so effort needs to be done to push back upon the foundation that movies like Ace Ventura helped to reinforce. And to the other defences that I don't want to waste a lot of time on, the defences of, well, it's just comedy, can't you take a joke? Or, well, it was so long ago, why are you trying to cancel it? 1. Comedy can still have a real-world impact and can be used to influence how people think or feel. And 2, I'm not trying to cancel it, but we can clearly see the literal effects that movies like Ace Ventura had on other franchises that then had effects on real-world people and their perceptions of real-world trans people. None of this shit exists in a bubble, and so considering it is absolutely something that I think is still very valuable to do, and that you shouldn't dismiss. So that's my argument against the defences that people might put out. But now we gotta say a little bit on the transphobia present here. Like we've already covered, what this really is a display of the concepts around trans women that have really become foundational to much transphobia that the community faces. The vivid reactions to trans bodies from people who are clearly only considering them in regards to their ability to match a conventional form of living, the aggressive invasion of a trans person's body with no real provocation. Seriously, the entire premise of Ace's case is based around ripping off as many clothings as possible from Einhorn to prove that she is trans. And that in some way proves his case when there exist many trans women? As I said, Einhorn could have just been a different trans woman who wasn't Ray Finkel. The transformation of a trans person into a stereotype of a twisted pervert who is overtly sexual and whose mockery is essential to the latter half of the comedy is also a big feature here. Ultimately, you can really see why Ace Ventura became such a well-known transphobic piece, because it contains all the elements that we would come to see over and over again in its offspring. The transphobic jokes that get used throughout shows like How I Met Your Mother, IT Crowd, Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park, and many others. All of which did it afterwards, and almost seemed to be taking notes from Ace Ventura. While there are certainly movies like Boys Don't Cry or The Crying Game which are more visually aggressive in the violation of trans bodies, although not much more than the scene of Ace Ventura tearing off Einhorn's clothing, Ace Ventura had the advantage for being worse of being more appealing to a younger audience, having a PG-13 rating and being designed for teenagers who like Jim Carrey's style of humour, as well as having no real attempt to show some sympathy towards the trans individual. Family Guy, the show that showed the most influence from the movie, at least attempted to make Quagmire's parent be sympathetic, to give Ida some narrative that lets us connect with her and see things from her side. Ace Ventura doesn't even bother doing that, because the trans character is one we are not meant to feel any kind of empathy towards at all. So that's the Ace Ventura video. And I think I can more safely declare this as truly one of the worst moments in all of trans media history. It's iconic almost in the transphobia it represents, and I think because of that, it should be almost an essential criticism for thinking about what we need to change in trans media. This is the very thing we are fighting to counteract, that we're trying to teach people to not do. And sometimes a piece can be instrumental in its failures as much as another succeeds by demonstrating success. At its core, this is the essence of trans misogyny, toxic homophobic masculinity, and systemic bigotry. Yep, successfully managed to tick off all the boxes and justify my 3 years of sociology and media studies degree. Thank God that wasn't a wasted time, huh? Lets me use buzzwords like that to sound smart. Now, you might be feeling a little burnt out, a little rough after all that. And you know what's a great solution to that problem? Liking, sharing, subscribing. Heck, you could even comment down below and tell me what other movie or TV show you would like me to check out, that I can add to my list of like 50 other TV shows and movies that I've got to do at some point before I call this series done. Yeah, we've got plenty more to go. I think enough to last like 5 years of content for this the trans something of piece of media something, so hopefully people like it enough to keep it going that long. Which brings us to the fact that you can also help out more with that if you go to my Patreon. A fantastic place to give me money that I use for paying bills like rent and electricity and internet and food, which for some reason I need to live, but I also don't get given to me. It's almost like they want people to die. All the people on my Patreon in the $5 and up category should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I really do appreciate each and every one of them for the contributions that they do to make it possible for me to have any kind of security while I make these videos. And, as I've promised in a previous video, if we ever reach $1,000 a month on there, I will actually make one of those Q&A videos for people to ask questions with, because, well, I need proof that that's something people want to see, because I don't know why you're interested about me, you know? This is a YouTube channel about trans TV shows and movies, not a YouTube channel about Lily. Who gives a shit about that? Other than all of that, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.